Welcome to On Point, presented by Sutherland Institute. On Point is a political commentary show focusing on current events here in Utah. I'm Michelle Mumford, a former candidate for Utah Attorney General and a local attorney here in Salt Lake. I'm joined today by Michelle Weeks, candidate for State Senate for District 11, and Jackie Nielsen, candidate for State Senate District 2. I do want to remind everybody that as a 501c3 nonprofit, Sutherland Institute does not endorse candidates, but it does endorse the idea of getting better acquainted with candidates from across the political spectrum. So let's get started. Thank you for joining us today. It's really great to have you.
Thank you, Michelle.
Michelle, tell me a little bit about your background.
Sure. I'm originally from Maryland, and I graduated from Towson University. I was an academic debater and public speaker, and nationally ranked for that. And then I worked on Capitol Hill. And it was great being an intern there and seeing how government works. And
Right.
It kind of enticed me. And enticed me about when people are vocal about their opinions, it does make a difference in our government, both local, state, and nationally. So it really encouraged me to have a strong opinion wherever I went. I then got involved in the media for a little bit, and I pretty much covered the political beat for cable stations in that area. Moved to Atlanta, where I worked for legislators, both Republican and Democrat. And then from there, in my 20s, I traveled the world, which was very nice. You know, I ate cheese and crackers. It wasn't extravagant. But I learned in all my third world countries that I explored that good government makes your society grow.
Right.
But when the government doesn't invest in your education or invest in the people, the country really suffers. And I did homeless projects. I built orphanages, helped build schools and raise money for schools, helped build water purification projects, and really got involved in that. When I got married, I moved out to Utah, which was 15 years ago. My husband is a graduate of BYU and grew up in Murray. He's a Murray boy. And, you know, just fell in love with the culture and the mountains out here in Utah.
Right. And those are some of the issues that you've really been focusing on in your campaign, right? The education and the environment and the smog problems, things like that.
Absolutely. I have a little boy, Christian. He's wonderful. But he had a speech issue. And when he was 4 years old, I took him to speech class. And there was 15 kids in that speech pathology class.
Wow.
With one assistant.
Right.
And I compare, you know, I don't like to compare, but most states only have 3 kids.
Right.
With one speech pathologist.
I've had 2 daughters have speech issues and have services through an IDEA.
Yeah.
California, we were in California at the time, they were private twice a week. We moved to Utah and it was a similar 1 child and a 15 student.
And you're like, how are these children ever going to learn how to pronounce their R's?
Right.
How are they ever going to learn how to speak
Wed
correctly?
Wabbit, that's how I talked when I was.
And if you invest in the child when he's young, you can correct the problem, and then you don't have to invest in him throughout the history of his education. And so that really alerted me that there was a problem here. And then I spoke about ADHD. As Mrs. Utah last year, I went around the state and was speaking about ADHD and finding their gifts. But the real thing I realized is being involved in school systems and volunteering for thousands of hours, it's not always the teacher's fault.
Right.
When you put 35 kids in a class, which is some of the highest number of kids in a class in the world, not just in Utah or in the United States, but in the world, kids fall through the cracks. And teachers cannot correct all those papers. And teachers are, I mean, you have a couple bad apples and everything, but teachers truly are trying to help educate our kids. We need a voice that's going to be the bridge between the parents, the teachers, and the educators, and the state Senate.
Right.
And I wanted to be that voice, and that's why I said, sign me up.
Threw your hat in, that's great.
Sign me up.
And Jackie, what's your history? Where are you? What's your background?
Well, I grew up in the Midwest, and my first degree was at Georgia Tech, economics under industrial management. And then I spent about 5 years in the South Pacific racing sailboats. I've been very involved competitively in water sports all my life, and so I worked and enjoyed my sports as I had the opportunity to understand not only the cultures of other nations, but to understand America better by being outside those walls and looking in and wondering why are there people that hate America when we do so many things for so many people. And so, you know, it was a real important private educational time for me. I have have since lived in several countries with my kids, wanting them to have a different type of education. Not that I don't want them to have this one, but along with the education that's here, that I think sometimes can be very limiting and can, instead of fostering imagining outside the box, hold those thoughts within a realm that's on the agenda, and so I'm very passionate about education as well. Now, I became involved. I'm a businesswoman. I've built my own chain of retail stores. I did a community service magazine up in Cache Valley. It had a distribution larger than the local newspaper. So my background is business,
right,
not politics. I got involved in politics, and I think about the time you did. I saw things happening. I became an empty nester. It's so hard to really be involved when you've got kids at home,
right,
and keep that balance.
Right.
And so I saw some of the things that were happening, and it concerned me a great deal. So I got involved. I got involved as a citizen. I got involved as a citizen lobbyist. I got involved as a
county party activist,
Yes,
volunteer leader.
Absolutely. I served in the county party for 5 years, and enjoyed that, and I learned a great deal. I spent 2 years working with Senator Hatch. I've worked with Congressman Stewart, and I've helped people, everybody in my district, in our district,
Yes,
that has run for office in the last 5 years. My husband and I have been involved with and helped with their campaign.
Right.
And it's always surprising how many people don't know what's going on. And when they do, they're like, whoa, what? And so first I had to educate myself, and then helping people to understand and where to look,
right,
to find these things out for themselves.
Right.
And as far as my decision to run, I'm not feeling very represented in my district by my senator. He's an appointed senator, and he's got
and Senator Tabakis is
Senator
your
Tabakis,
senator.
and he has his special interest groups, and the rest of us, it is not an issue. Even his special interest groups, he's not really representing on the floor because he's an agitator rather than a legislator. So when you want something passed, he's not going to be able to do it because he's already burned those bridges, and very deliberately and joyously. And
So you wanted to run against
I
that.
want not only for me to have representation, but everyone in Salt Lake. We have a very diverse area. We have 3,200 homeless.
Right.
1/4 of those are veterans. I have 2 veterans in my house. I want all of us to have a voice.
Right.
Not just the Democrats, not just the Republicans, but the
Citizens.
unaffiliated.
Yeah.
Everyone.
So this is fascinating to me. So you're running as a Democrat in a very heavily Republican area.
Absolutely.
And you're running as a Republican in a very heavily Democrat area.
Absolutely.
And so the question becomes, here in Utah politics,
Right.
it's kind of common knowledge that when you go towards negative ads or negative campaigning, that it doesn't work well for you. And how do you go against the machine? Somebody on Twitter, just we were talking about this. How do you, for instance, Doug Owens' ads just started kind of attacking Mia Love. It'll be interesting to see if it helps
Backfires
him,
or not.
or
Yeah.
if it backfires. How do you go against the machine and make a difference? My 2 cents is that your message should be what makes the difference and getting it out. I guess the question is, how do you get that out without going negative? What do you think?
I think it's easy to go
Okay,
against
tell
the
us how.
machine because I am working a 14-hour day
Yeah.
on this campaign.
That's right. It
and
takes work.
It takes a lot of work.
That's right.
And every time I am hungry for knowledge. So I'm going to UDOT and I'm speaking to individuals in UDOT. I'm going to education institutions. I'm speaking to individuals with education institutions. I'm going everywhere to gather the knowledge that I think we need to have better government,
Right.
whether it's coming from a Republican source or a Democratic source.
Right.
I'm just looking for information, and I find that the senator I'm running against, he's been there a very long time. He's been there 22 years. And I do think we should have some term limitations, because after a while I just feel like you get disconnected from who you are representing.
Our lieutenant governor just suggested term limits. I don't know if
Yeah.
he meant statewide, or federal why
or something.
yeah, he
And, you know, I feel that in my area, they do feel disconnected to their legislator, because at a point, sometimes they stop working for the vote. And if you're an individual like us, we understand that we have to work for our vote. And by working for our vote, we're knocking on the doors, we're getting the issues out, we're showing where we're different from our legislators, maybe not in a negative way, but showing where we're different, how they voted on a bill versus how I would vote on a bill.
Right.
And showing our stance, not personally, but just on their voting record. And by doing that and educating your voters where you're standing and how you're opposite from whom you're running against, it's not negative, you're just showing a contrast.
So how do you show that contrast without it appearing negative, or do you think that negative, it's not as bad as people say?
I think you do it by using facts. You keep the emotion out of it, and you use your facts in order to show where you're standing, where somebody else is standing.
Right.
And you just use your facts. And you show who's endorsed you. For instance, if I have every educational group endorsing me, UEA, FTA, Jordan School District, Canyon School District, and I'm running on an education platform.
Do
and
the school districts endorse candidates?
School, like UEA and let's say
UEA
Jordan.
does.
Yeah,
or-
but yeah, I got the
would
JEA.
a school district, would a government
I've got
entity?
Jordan Education Associations.
Oh.
I've got
Is
them.
that the teachers association?
It is.
Okay.
It's affiliated
I
with
just-
UEA.
The government
district,
units
yeah.
wouldn't,
No,
would
the government
they? Okay.
Yeah, that's very true. Sorry about that.
No, I was just I'm just curious.
And thank
I
you
don't
for correcting
know.
me.
I don't,
But then you look at who's got endorsed by all these education associations
Right.
and who doesn't. Now, who do you think is going to be more favorable for education?
right, and so you use that argument
Right.
as opposed to so-and-so doesn't do this, or as a negative thing. What do you think about it, Jackie?
Well, I think it's very delicate. I think that even bringing the facts forward, people can consider it negative. So you have to work really hard not to be negative and yet show how you'd be different. And I think that what has been the most effective for me, first of all, is getting out among the people, knocking on doors, and showing that I'm interested and that I care. And one thing I've noticed as a candidate is so many of the elected officials or other candidates I was running against, it's all about what I want to make happen. And I think maybe women, it's a little easier for women to think, what's important to you? What's important to you? How can I balance that with what my principles are?
Right.
And so I think that's a very important.
I like looking at it that way. What makes you different, as opposed to he does this or I do. What
Yes.
makes you different? This is why
But
I
it's
would be
still
different.
difficult. But it's
Yeah.
still difficult because if you say, well, this is what makes me different, no matter how factual it is,
Right.
if you are very much in the camp of that candidate, then you disagree.
Well, and it is so sensitive. I mean,
Yes,
so
yes.
sensitive now that candidates are trying to go the opposite way, like the Temple mailer. They just said, they put Mike Lee, or was it Mike Lee and was it Bob Bennett? Mike Lee in front of the Temple and Bob Bennett in front of the DC and said, who do you want? And they were trying to make it appear like it was a negative that Mike Lee had put it out, and oh, that's awful, I'm going to vote for like they're even trying to go around it even back. I mean, it's just crazy. And this honestly is why the average citizen gets so tired of politics.
It is.
Because of these games that are played. And I think just the candidate out knocking doors and listening, like you said, and authentically just saying, this is why I would be different and I would really appreciate your vote is so refreshing.
Well,
And as a citizen, I am busy.
Yeah.
I'm super busy.
Which is why they don't always know
Right.
everything that's
I'm busy
going
trying
on.
to make a living. I'm busy trying to raise my kids. I'm trying
Right.
to get food on the table, the homework done, and maybe have 5 minutes to myself.
Right.
And that 5 minutes, I'm not going to look into my political
Read the
world,
news. Yeah. Yeah.
I'm not going to
Right,
as an
right.
average citizen.
Right.
So it's up to us as candidates to really work hard to say, hey, this is what's important to me. Is that important to you? And if that is, then I need your vote. And if that isn't, then that's fine, vote for my other guy.
Right.
But it's up, and that's what, as a candidate, our job is basically to do, is to make everybody take time to figure out what is important and how that's going to affect their lives.
Right. Right.
well, and one of the things that I'm finding, that I'm very pleased to find after some very troubling years where, even the term Democrat, Republican, it just irritates people.
It's a trigger.
It
is.
is. People our age are having more trouble getting away from it, but the newer generation are wanting, they're wanting that middle ground. They're wanting candidates that are going to listen to everyone and not stand on a platform. Now, standing on principles, but and if those principles align, you know, that's great. But they want to get away from this. It's all about the Democrats or it's all about the Republicans, and they want some middle ground.
Right.
And you know, there's a lot of people in this middle ground that are fiscal conservatives, that are Common Core. You know, so there's a good mix in there. But what I'm seeing finally coming out is a group of people who are resisting the image of Democrat and Republican that has been so negatively portrayed in the press, that we lose sight of the very good values in both and the things that are in common in both. And it's time for us to be standing together, not arguing over, you know, this difference and this difference. It's time for us to stand together.
So you mentioned Common Core in your comment there.
I did.
A little segue. You're both
I
interested
did.
really in education, and it's an issue the governor just recently recently has said, you know what, he really wants to get to the bottom of this, or really find out how this will hurt or help the people of Utah, so that we can stop kind of bickering about it or fighting about it. I know bickering seems to lessen the debate going on, but you know, it's important. It is a serious debate. And so the Attorney General had a report a couple days ago that concluded that the state did not give up its authority or its power, and that in fact it can still change the standards that have been implemented. The critics of the Common Core in general said, well, that wasn't really the question or the problems that we had with Common Core. What are your thoughts, and how do you think the state, how do you think we can go forward, bridging the gap, you know, being not necessarily in the middle, but working so that it's not a shrill Common Core, oh no, and
like
getting
Democrat,
down to the How can we solve the problem? Let's do it right now in 2 minutes.
Well, well, first of all, I think we need to understand that we have taken funds that have tied us to it, so it's not simply a matter of, well, let's just vote it out. You know, like Obamacare, it's not just a matter of let's just vote it away. We have to deal with aspects of it, you know, and where we have the ability to raise our standards, and we don't ever want to go below the standards. That's great, and that has always been there. But the question of who's the most effective in determining the needs of the children, is it DC, or is it the parents and the teachers and the school administration? And that's the big question with Common Core. It's a big question with One Child Left Behind.
And I think everybody's going to answer that. It's the parents and the teachers in the school district that are more able to you know, make the changes that need to be made. So if everybody agrees on that principle, what is the problem?
So basically, it's the governors that have created this program. It's the governors of our nation.
The Western governors initially, and then it was taken by the
So you have your
Department
governors
of
that
Education.
have created the system. And basically, our world is becoming smaller. I mean, you look at individuals, we're going to India to bring in high-tech individuals into Utah. Our world is becoming very transit. And for instance, people are moving, like you moved from California to Utah. You want to make sure that your son or daughter in 5th grade who's learning multiplication tables is learning the same thing in California that you're learning in Utah. It's a standard that we need to meet. Now, but we have not given up our power, because when you look at our curriculum is basically locally based. We choose what our curriculum is.
Based on the standards?
No, well, you have to meet the standards, but if you want to learn multiplication tables this way, that's fine, as long as you know at the end result you're going to know the information. It's up to Utah to create its own curriculum, and we have our own curriculum, and it is good. And there are other states that are looking at Utah curriculum and buying our curriculum because it's so good.
What's
now,
the main
is there
objection?
problem? Is the problem is parents aren't understanding Common Core math, because it's not straightforward like Saxton math. And I like Saxton math. I enjoyed Saxton math having my kids. But it's harder for these parents to understand why we are going around the base to get to the answer. And a lot of times the individuals, the educators, are saying, because we have to have our kids think outside the box, because our world is changing so quickly, we need to make sure that they come to the answer in a different way.
Well, I understand the math coming in. Why are they why did they decide, and this is just my curiosity, I'm not
No.
arguing one or the other, why did they decide to like change it now, like in a 5th grader, so like a student that really enjoyed math last year has something new that they have to learn this year, and there's this negativity.
It's been a process of moving on, and I think the negativity is because no one has come out and really tried to educate people about what the Common Core is, because it has such a negative connotation to it. Is it perfect? Absolutely not.
Right.
Do we need to tweak it? Do we need to make sure that we have more of a parent's voice in what we want as for our curriculum? Absolutely. You know,
I just wonder why they don't
equipped.
started with the younger and start it there, since it's a new, and not make them do it.
And when you look at the SAT and ATC scores, they are changing to more of our Common Core curriculum.
Right.
So if you didn't start it in 6th grade, those individuals that graduated when they're 18, they wouldn't know the language or
Of
the
course.
terminology on the SAT, ACT scores, and that would hurt them in the long run.
Isn't
getting
that
involved in
part of the
problem.
critique that even the SAT and the ACT, these private for-funding companies are, they're the ones that are driving these changes because they're changing their tests, and now we have to make sure that our kids.
Who's driving who?
That's a good question.
I mean, who's driving who? Like, I know there's problems with Common Core, but that's one of the reasons that I want to be a state senator, because I'm a mom doing the homework and understand where the problems are.
What
but
would
I know
you
it
do
have to
first?
be in the system. I think what we really need, and you look at other states, they have really spent a lot of time training the teachers and educating the teachers on how to teach this new system. And I think if we have well-qualified, educated teachers on how to address Common Core, that's one thing. We also have to spend some time educating the parents on how they can help their kids with Common Core. I think, educating it at the ground level will help. And other states, you have, during your break time, teachers can come in and talk to an expert on science or history and say, I'm a little bit confused on this. How am I teaching? And you can talk to an expert, and he can tweak you and tell you, maybe if you try this approach, it might be, or maybe if you try this approach, you have someone to talk to. And I don't think we have the resources there. And I think if we did, we're going to see something, because we as a nation, as Utah, we have to start competing with other states, because other states are going to come in and take our high-paying jobs. That workforce is going to come in and take our high-paying jobs unless we get our children educated now.
Right. No, I agree. What do you think about it, Jackie? Or what would you do as Senator Nielsen? What would you do the first
I
little
would
while?
fight for the parents and the children, and that means that we make as many of our decisions about our education locally as we can. I don't believe that one size fits all, which is what Common Core wants to make happen, and I don't believe DC should decide how our children are educated. Now, I believe that we should improve our education, but not necessarily in the exact way that it has been stipulated, and these are the test questions we want to train our children to answer to meet the social changes that we are pushing in our schools.
Right. Regardless of whether the federal is pushing it or it's a one, now with the fact that SAT and ACT are going to be
Adapting.
asking this certain questions, how do we respond to that while keeping our own power and authority over what our kids are learning?
I think that we need to go back to a Thomas Jefferson education, where we're teaching our history, and we're teaching our children to make decisions and to make them outside of the box, not to make them to conform. And I think that we need to and we need to make those decisions locally, because if they're made at a national level, we do lose the ability to really be creative on our own. And I know, yes, we can do this, and yes, we can do this, but it's still very much driven in a certain direction. And your question being, how do we address that? First of all, the reason they're adapting is because of Common Core, not because that is the education that is best for our children.
Right, but they're already doing it.
If we, sure, and a year from now,
Utah has great
ACT
ACT scores, and I want to make sure Utah keeps.
Yes.
See,
I want to make sure my kid gets the
Gets
best
the
college that he can.
Me too.
And who's to say they won't change that again as the states say, no, I'm sorry, I'm not going to have you dictate these things to me. It will adapt again.
Right.
But our curriculum is chosen locally.
It is. And the school board has really, focused. I know Jennifer Johnson has written a few op-eds to help educate the people that this is, what at least how the school board feels that things work. And speaking of the school board, so the recent decision by Judge Waddups in the Utah District Court finding unconstitutional our current way of electing school board members. Right now it goes to a committee who winnows down the candidates to 3, and those 3 names go to the governor, who gives 2 names for the ballot. And Judge Waddups found that that is a non-neutral way and a unconstitutional way of electing our school board members. So the legislature will have to go back and address this. They've been addressing it or trying to address it for years, but they've never been able to decide whether it should be a partisan election or a nonpartisan election, or as Dave Boer just said to us, some kind of a hybrid. I think might be the new cooperative conclusion that comes out of this. What would you guys do as senators? How would you
Do you want to take
that?
it, or do you want me to?
It doesn't matter to me.
Well, I would like to say, first and foremost, no one in the state feels as though the state school board is accountable to the parents. So this committee who appoints, whether the governor then makes decisions or not, is the place we need to change that and get these state school board members accountable to the public, where we are voting for people that we understand who they are, whether it's partisan or nonpartisan. They need to be coming to us.
So you want a direct
vote.
Election?
Absolutely, absolutely. And if we need to make that a little easier, I don't know, we can do that. But you know what? That state school board is not accountable to us. UTA is not accountable to us. You know what? When they're not accountable to the citizens, they're not representing the citizens.
Might be different.
That's right.
And I have to agree with you on many levels. When you look at the state school board right now, it's made up of a lot of individuals that are part of the charter school system, that are part of big businesses, that have a lot of industry interests, that are not always educators. And in the past history...
Do you think those on the charter school system aren't in that? I mean, you put them in with the business...
No, but I'm just saying there's not as many public school individuals right now that are represented. But my point is you're looking at how we are educating our kids and the best way to educate our kids. And I think business is important. I think I have a child in a charter school and a child in a public school, so I have a vested interest in both.
Right.
And I see the benefits of both.
Right.
But for instance, if you're against the voucher system and you're on the state school board, somehow those individuals that were against the voucher system never even got nominated for the state school board the next time, because they were against the majority of the state school board, even though it went to an election and it wasn't the majority of the people. It was the majority of the state school board.
Well, and that's the viewpoint discrimination that Judge Waddups pointed out.
So therefore, I think that it should just be based on, primary. Let's have a primary. And I don't think it should be Republicans against Democrats. I think what you really have to look at is your views on education and where you want to take education. Because
how do you get that? And that's just getting the message out. If it's not politically based, that's just each person getting the message out.
We do that right now with our city council. We do that with our local school boards. It's a possibility, and that way it makes the voter look at, oh, you are for this, oh, you are for this, you are for this, and not just say, oh, I am a Democrat, so I'm going to vote for that Democrat. Well, you know what? That Democrat may not be my point of view. I might look more at the Republican point of view.
Do you think the parties help? Do you think affiliation helps to give at least a foundation or a level of principle?
I think a lot of individuals in the state of Utah, you are very Republican, other than a few areas that you guys live in, then people do tend to vote straight ticket without looking at the issues. I don't want someone voting straight ticket when it comes to my education of my kids.
Well, now this particular ballot, we've made sure and put pictures right next to the different parties, so people don't even need to know how to.
Oh, that's interesting. Are there pictures on
this?
Is that new?
It is, to go with this new legislation that allows people to register to vote and vote the same day, as well as you don't need to have an address or anything like that in order to vote. And so we have pictures.
Oh, I don't like pictures on the ballot.
And that
there are all
allows
of
you to go
these
straight
studies
ticket.
that show that attractive people win more.
It's not pictures of the
That's not
candidates.
fair.
It's the elephant
Not the-
and the donkey. And
Oh,
yeah.
I was like,
So
I was like,
until I was my makeup okay.
my hair about this at all. Are you sure?
I'm like, oh my God, let me see.
him to go straight ticket. I know.
That's funny. Okay.
You definitely
yes.
win over Howard in that case. Howard,
Like they haven't taken mine yet. Like you haven't.
but
Never
it's
mind.
to
I won't go
encourage
there.
people to
You
go
have an
straight
advantage.
ticket. Straight ticket.
I don't know. People find Howard very attractive.
So it's no, and there's a discussion, a conversation itself about whether the straight ticket option should be on a ballot or not.
I know, and this absolutely
different
is
It is.
baiting for, and this is the Salt Lake ballot, so I have no
Yeah,
idea other
right.
places, but this is to encourage people to vote straight party,
Right.
which leaves the judges out completely. But the judges are another thing that we don't have information on.
You have to go and look for it.
You have to go and look for it,
them up.
and-
It's in a place.
And in history, we see 90% of, whether it's our civilization or another one, that does not engage in doing their homework,
Right.
which is why I think that we can go with the party on school board and city council, things like that, to help people understand that these should be the values of this. People don't do the homework that we should all be doing.
Right.
Absolutely the way it needs to be done. But that isn't. The fact is, people don't even know who their state school board people are. They
But
don't
I
know who their
am-
judges are.
And, you know, I do know in my local school board race, you know, I don't know whether they're a Democrat or Republican. So therefore, I look at each of their websites.
And
I
if
know what they
everybody
are.
did that,
Makes me-
and if
and it
everybody
makes-
did
I know
that,
it's not listed, but I know
Yeah,
what they are.
But, you know, and it makes me look at the individual and what they
And if
stand
everyone
for.
did that,
And that's
that
what
would
I'm
be
basic.
perfect.
And if you just put whether they're a Democrat or Republican, encourage
you
them
need
from
more
even
than
look
that.
into what they
out.
represent. And I think
but
the
people
more
are-
information
Jackie's-
that we get involved,
that's right.
then,
we need to.
you know, that's why I don't think, you know, it should be a Democrat Republican thing. I think it should be the best individuals for the race.
and the curious thing to me is that the legislature hasn't been able to decide for so many years, and now they're going to have
They
to.
have
Change
to.
of guard, let's bring in new ideas. Out with the old, in with the new.
And really quick,
I can't say that because Jim has only been there 2 years, and I don't think he's ever read
Has
one
he really only
legislative
been there
piece.
2 years?
And he was appointed, so he, you know, that's not the argument I have, but in my race. Now
right.
that doesn't mean I don't feel that way sometimes in
Right.
other races.
right.
So
So
again, it's more the person than it is the length of time, because seniority sometimes is an important
Right.
issue.
really quickly,
Yeah.
we're almost out of time, but this is a big issue in Utah. The gay marriage decision came out on Monday, or the non-decision, as many are calling it. And the 10th Circuit ruling is effective law, and gay marriage is part of who Utah is now. And I thought the message that many on Sunday was very relevant and prescient, to be told that, you know, love your neighbor and be civil. But regardless, we have this books and books of statutes. Obviously, they're not books anymore.
But that's right.
Yes, but well, they are books. But anyway, that's not the conversation. That need to be reformed or changed because they refer to husband and wife. Some of them are innocuous, you know, that can easily be changed. But some of them are things like, you know,
Adoption.
default. Yeah, adoption is, well, adoption needs to be addressed, and will probably be likely to be sued, you know, a subject of a suit. Adoption by two non-biological, because one biological, now the partner can adopt, but Utah law forbids two gay fathers who aren't the father from adopting right now, and so that likely will come over. But these other things, like default when you're married, that if a woman has a child, the husband is considered the father, the biological father. You know, how will that affect in a gay marriage? If it's, you know, the mother, will the mother be considered, you know, just think, you know, will it be also the biological mother, or
Now,
also the
now,
mother,
was
or
this a
what about
quick
the father
question?
if they still
Did
want
you
to?
say
I
this is a
know. This is the point.
A
Like,
half hour for this one.
I know. What are
Half an hour for the question.
How do you see these? Yeah, the question wasn't there. How do you see it as a policy matter going through? Because my point was, some of them are innocuous changes, some of them are really policy questions.
Yeah.
Is it going to be another, how do you see it? How would you respond?
You know, and I read Governor Herbert's response the other day.
Right.
And I agree with him.
Right.
You know, it has been passed down by law. And we as Utah citizens, we will obey the law.
Right.
And it is important that these individuals, by law, have the same constitutional right that if they want to get married, then they should be able to.
Right.
And I truly believe that. And when you look at incidences, you know, whether you believe it threatens your sanctuary of marriage or not, it doesn't threaten mine. I'm very secure with my husband and wife, my kids. It doesn't threaten me as an individual. But you look at individuals and they've been together for a lifetime, but yet someone is dying on the table. You cannot go in there if you're not a husband or something like that and say goodbye to your loved one.
Actually, you can with a paragraph. I mean, we all need to have a
living
will.
They can now.
Yeah,
and
you
what would you
could
do with
before.
these other
And you
things?
could before.
What would you do with these other things that ruling doesn't talk about?
You know, and
Adoption
that's something that we're going to have to look at after. But I do not step in everybody's shoes. And I cannot make a determination of what is good for you, because your life is so totally different than what is good for me.
But as a state legislator,
I
what
do.
is good? What is good for the state?
What is good for the state? You have to look at the issues and be addressed to the issues and understand the circumstances and see where you are tripping on somebody else's rights as an individual, the same rights that I have, and where, you know, I am protecting society as a whole.
Right.
Those are things that you're going to have to weigh as a state legislator, and you know, those are when the issues come up. You need to address them by issue. And look at each one of them. And like you said, it's very complicated. You've rambled off 20 issues, you know. And
I don't think I was rambling. I think I was succinctly
That's right.
stating a question. I was rambling.
So that's what you have to do. But
Do you think it's going to be another 20-year, like a Roe v. You know, like
No,
or do
I
you
don't
think
think
people
so.
will finally settle on
I think
it?
people will finally settle.
What do you think, Jackie?
Well, I absolutely agree. Today, at this moment in time, it is the law of the land, and I believe in the law of the land. And I believe that if you disagree with the law of the land, you go the appropriate way to change it. You don't have a judge legislate from the bench to change it. But it is the law of the land, and I support it as the law of the land. There are issues that need to be taken care of, even if it remains like this. We have 2 more district courts that have to make a determination on the same thing. When one or both of them make it in a different direction, then it needs to be addressed again. Then at that point, the Supreme Court can't blow it off. Then they have to deal with it. So is it over? I wish it was over in one form or another, because it's a difficult issue. There's so much propaganda. Oh, they can't do this, they can't do. Oh my gosh, you're an attorney. One paragraph and you can do 99% of the things.
Right.
And I have another issue with this whole thing. I do believe in traditional marriage personally. It's one of the reasons that I'm running, so that voice is in this race as well. But I believe that we need to respect, first of all, the voice of the people. We can't have one person making a change for us. We need to go through the process
Except for
to
Justice
get there.
Kennedy. He is a very important person in this country. Sorry, that was a different ramble.
No, I'm with you.
Well, whoever is in the legislature next term really has a lot to think about. There's a lot to do.
I'm not
and
sure
things.
that is going to be in the legislature. The making the corrections and adjustments will.
The adoption will. What do you think about the ordinances? The cities, many cities and counties now have the equal protection ordinances that will likely come back up in the state.
Well,
Non-discrimination. Did I say equal protection? The non-discrimination.
First of all,
For instance, I'm sorry, go ahead. I'll
No,
let you
that's
go.
fine.
I'm just going to
Housing.
clarify. Okay.
Yeah.
first of all, we should be treating everyone equally, and we shouldn't have to legislate. Legislating those decisions, legislating kindness, respect, doesn't work. Creating another special interest group is not the way to go. Now, if we need to make adjustments because we're not being fair, we can look at that. But creating another special interest group isn't that way. When I interviewed with the LGBT, one of the questions they asked me was, would I fight for something that would guarantee a gay person their job fired, they wouldn't be under the right to work? Well, you know what? I can be fired for sneezing the wrong way, and I don't want you to be fired because you're pretty. I don't want you to be fired because you're so darn capable, you know, or whatever the reason is. And I think it needs to be addressed evenly across the board.
Do you think the legislature will take it up?
I think they will.
You think they will?
Yeah, they
You think
will.
they'll pass it?
You know, I think in the light of what happened, I think it's more likely to be passed.
So you think it's
and
more...
you look at, I mean, you look at our civil rights, and you look at Martin Luther King, and you look at how we should have been treating each other way back when, and society just didn't do it.
Right.
Unless
But
it was forced
legislation
to.
doesn't necessarily
And
solve the problem.
It helped definitely in that problem. It helped definitely bridge the gap between black and white. And I think it's sad that as a society we may not be treating somebody equal because they have fell in love with somebody that you don't approve of. And I don't think that's appropriate. And if it's
I
a
don't think
history
that's
of
what
it,
it's about.
and
And
if
that's
it's a
not what it's
history
about.
of it, then I don't think an individual should be kicked out of their housing because they are in love with another man or another woman. They have a right, just like I have a
course
right,
they
just
do.
like my kids have a right
course
to
they do.
live in their
Property
area.
owner have a right
No, they rented it. They rented it to that individual.
But-
and if they're not damaging the property, they're not causing any civil problems, they're not, they're within the states of
Sure,
the law,
Right.
sure.
then, you know,
But
then
that's
that's
not
doing
what
it
the
behind their
legislation
door.
would do.
should be
Yeah.
affected.
And that's fine, that's right. But that's not what it's about. It's about a protection for this group that even if they are doing those things, they're protected. Even if I'm not showing up for work,
Right.
it's going to be harder to fire
I
me if
disagree
I'm
with
gay.
that. I
That's
totally
what
disagree
the
with what she's
legislation
saying.
affects.
Because-
And that's why we don't legislate for every special interest group in the world. I mean, you know, let's women, you know, let's legislate. Well, let's start working together. Let's start standing together.
So if it came up at the legislature, you would vote against it and you would vote for it?
It depends on how it's written.
Well, I understand what you're saying.
Absolutely, it depends. Because we should.
Basically, if I have a certain amount of rights and I get fired, and I think an individual, I will get fired if I don't show up to work, as any individual, black, white, purple, whomever you want to love, you're still going to get fired
Right.
if you don't show up to work.
Right.
The
It's a lot more
problem is,
difficult if you're a protected special interest group.
well, they
Absolutely.
also said that about women. They also said that about
There's
blacks.
more litigation.
Yeah.
Lots.
So
There's more related
but what I'm
litigation.
saying is, whatever my civil liberties are, you should be offered the same.
Absolutely.
Right.
Absolutely. But legislating a new special interest group doesn't make us the same. It gives you advantages over me.
And that has been...
And
that
that's the problem.
And that's been the argument all the way back
Yeah.
against the ERA and up until today.
Yeah.
Thank you both.
Thank you so
for
much,
joining
Michelle.
us
It was nice
today.
delightful.
We
Thank
appreciate
you.
it.
It's very nice.
It's good to be here, and good luck in your campaigning. I know it's a really busy season.
It's fun,
And
though.
it was great. Thank you for watching.
Thank you. Thanks, Michelle. It was a pleasure.